All right, so I'm finally sitting here in my new room, the Steam Pipe Audio Foundry, and I am. It's been a long time in the making. There was a lot of damage done. The whole room was completely gutted. All the gear was gone, and I'll do a deep dive on that in the next coming weeks. But over the past 6 months, I've been building this room out. And between scoping out the room and putting up the walls and accumulating the gear and taking the old gear and getting rid of it and taking any gear that could be repaired and repairing it, the wiring had to be done, new pieces had to be purchased. I lost an entire console. And so transferring from a console to working in a hybrid kind of fashion has taken some time. To figure out what the workflow is going to be, what that's going to look like. And so it's just been, I'd say it was a lot of fun, but it wasn't a lot of fun. But here we are. I've finally gotten it done. The last of the wiring went in a few days ago. And so a lot of this stuff has been sitting here. And I've been able to look at it, and it looks great. But I haven't been able to hear anything yet. So we're going to take it out for a spin. And what I've done here is I've pulled up some old drum tracks. I pulled out the old CD-ROM and I pulled them into the computer. And now these files, they're old files, so they all had to be converted from SD2 to WAV. And I've imported them. I had a little problem with this center section here. I don't know if you can see that, but some of the files were corrupted, and so I had to do some cuts, but it's basically the same thing that was originally recorded. But what we're going to do is I've got these laid out. We're going to go through the process of mixing these up. Not a huge mix. It's not like it's a record. It's just I'm going to try to see what I can get and use out some of the gear. Now I've got this. This is my Neve VR. It's a prism rack, 5 channels of a VR. I've got the dynamic section and the EQs for all 5. And I thought it was gone. I thought it was gone. It was covered in water, and Jeff Del Bello was able to completely refurbish the entire thing. He's recapped everything. All the chips have been replaced and cleaned up, and then he put in the John Musgrave mods for it. So this has been completely modded, and I've got a new 500 rack, which is replacing some of the stuff that got killed. My TLA 100 made it. I did a lot of cleanup on that, but it made it. It sounds good. My Avalon, my original 737, seemed to make it. That didn't really have any problems. It didn't look so good, but I've cleaned that up, and that sounds good. The Pultec has been rewired that, so that sounds really nice. I don't think we're going to use that today though. And then over here I've got some outboard gear. Some of the stuff still needs some work. The TC Electronics, the M1 and the D2 have got some issues, but the DBXs are nice, and the PCM91 survived, so I'm real happy about that. And I've actually got that running AES Connect direct, so I don't even need to wire it. It just comes right up. So let's take a look at what these sound like right off the bat, and then we can discuss how they were recorded. And we've got a pre-section. Here's the chorus. So overall, they sound pretty good. They were recorded well. What these are a bunch of they're a bunch of comps. So you've got the kick here, which is a comp of the a Beyer M88 inside, and then there's a FET that's close outside. The snare is a comp as well. There's 57 on top. I think it was a I think it was an AKG on the bottom, 451. I'm not happy with the comp. There's not enough bottom. You got a lot of top, which is great, but it doesn't have a whole lot of snap to it, and it's very ringy. So that's going to have to be controlled when we mix it. The hi-hat is the pretty standard stuff. I think that was an SE. That sounds good. The two racks, 421, and I think it was a 421. So 421's all the way around. The two racks are comped together, and then the floor is separate. The overheads are directional. So it was an AB. It wasn't a stereo field, so these were pointed directly. And so we've got a splash, a mid cymbal, and a ride. And he hits all those. So that needs to be taken care of, but it can't be panned hard left and right. So we're going to have to take care of making sure that we've got the cymbals kind of here, and then the hat is going to sit over here, and that should make it nice and bright all the way around. And then, of course, you've got the room. Now, the room that we recorded in was the top of a farmhouse, and it was in the attic. And the attic is it was an A-frame, and so you've got this triangle, and the walls are coming down here, and where the walls meet the floor was just a god-awful set of echoes. It was terrible. So we were able to get 6 futon mattresses, and we rolled them up, and we stuck them 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6 over there, and that got rid of everything on the floor. Or toward the sides of the room, and then we stuck carpets all along the middle of the room. But everything else was wood, and it was quite a long room. So it sounded pretty good in there. And the room mic that we've got is pretty bombastic, but it's not muddled. So you can definitely hear each drum as it's being hit, and we're going to use that to our great advantage, because one thing that I do like to do is I like to have my drums sound very natural. I don't like to have stupid engineering tricks on them, unless you're specifically going for that. But we're not going to do that today. We're just going to see how good we can make these within, say, half an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. This video won't be that long. Anyway, so these are the drums I've got. Let me set them up, route them where I want them to go, compress them, EQ them a little bit, and then I'll be back once I've done that, and we can go through each instrument and start to build that mix out. All right, here we are. So let's start with the kick first. Now, what I've got the kick doing is I've got the kick being sent out through the RME output, coming through the bay into Prism 1, the dynamic section. I'm going to gate it there and compress it, and then from there I'm taking it to the Neve 1073. And one of the things that I wanted on it is it's a little flubby. It's got great bottom end. Too much bottom end, in fact. So that needs to be rolled off, because these Questeds are fantastic and they can handle it, but you got to be careful because they can handle it and not everything else can. So I'm going to roll some of that very, very low bottom out, and then I'm going to take some of the flubbiness out of where of like what is it? It's like 360 down to 180, somewhere in there, and just kind of smooth that out a little bit so it's not so fat, and then get that click up, and so that it's definitely audible. So let's start with what we got, and let's work on the gate first. All right, so that's with nothing. Here's the gate. Now, one thing about gates is, obviously you're losing decay, but we're going to gain all that back once we get the room and the overheads back in, because we don't gate those unless you're looking for something strange. So I'm not too worried about the fact that you can definitely hear this gate. From there, we're going to compress it, Now, I'm not killing this. It's 2 to 1, and it's bringing it down at the most by around 4. So it's just light. It's just trying to control it, trying to thicken it up a little bit so that the highs and the lows are in sync with one another. Right? Then from there, we're going to the 1073. And this is where I said we were going to carve off some of that bottom, carve out some of that roundness in the low mids, and then raise the top just a little bit. Right, you hear the difference there? Here's out and in. All right, let's move on to the snare. All right, so the snare, as I said, it's thumpy, but it's got a lot of tonality to it, and I'm not in love with it. And it doesn't have that snare thing, whatever that snare thing is. It just doesn't have it. So I originally tried the 2264, the Neve compressor, and it was good, but it was too soft. It just wasn't. It was doing the vintage Neve thing. It just wasn't putting the bite that I needed into it. And I knew that I needed an EQ, so I opted for the Avalon here. And most people use Avalon only for vocals, but I find that it's pretty useful in a lot of different usages. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to compress it. All right, so that's in, that's out. All right, and I'm not hitting it all that hard. It's taking it down by like 2, and at the most. All right, so that was 3. At the very, very most, it's taking it down by 5. Then I'm hitting it with an EQ, and this really carves out. Now I'm taking this down by like -14 at 550. Raising, giving it a little air at 32, and then bumping that 250 back up to get that chest, the chest snap that I'm removing from the carve out at 550. Now, when I was growing up, and this is way back in the 70s, we had a Monte Carlo. It was a boat of a car, but that thing had a sound system that just, shut up, that just, it didn't matter how good the mix was, whatever it was, everything, every snare just went right through your chest, and it was awesome, and I got used to it, and I've loved it ever since. So it is kind of something that I always try to do. So let's go back to here, and let's drive that EQ in. Out, in. Now, obviously, you can hear the difference there. That's huge. And that helps a lot. But it wasn't enough. So I compressed again. And we'll see what this sounds like. Right, so now it's starting to tighten up. And this is a much faster. The Avalon is a slow attack, slow release, and this one is much faster. So it's just getting that snap, and I'm limiting. So it's bringing the whole thing together. The final thing that I did here was I added another EQ, because I was getting, there were some frequencies right in the 150 range that I hated, and I wanted to get rid of even more of the ring. So that's what this sounds like. final stage there was to add to it a plate reverb, which is the Waves plates, the Beatles plates. And I've added a little top end and I've rolled off all the bottom. So this should get that sizzle from the snare that is just missing. Let's take a look at that. Right, that's without it. And that's with it. I'm going to add the 91's reverb to the drum room. Right, and I'm pretty happy with that. Put the kick in. All right, so I'm pretty pleased with that. Of course, everything's going to be shored up with those overheads in that room. So let's just leave that for now. Let's go to the hat. And hat is pretty easy. It's just doing hat stuff. Now, the thing about hats, I said I like to keep things kind of natural sounding. One of the ways that I deal with the hat is I listen to the overheads and I listen to the room, and I get a sense of how much top end the room is actually producing, and I never really want to take that hat and raise it really beyond what's going on in the room, because if he really starts to hit it, he opens up that hat, it's going to take your ear and take your focus, and all of a sudden you're aware of the hat, and that's not natural. You just want the whole thing to be a set of drums that's cohesive. So let's take a look at what the hat sounds like with nothing on it. It's a hat. So all I'm doing here is I'm adding a console EQ, raising the top just a little bit, and I'm carving out everything at 1.7. I'm bringing it down by, how much? -10. Low, mid, I'm not touching. And then I've rolled off everything below 300 because there ain't nothing down there anyway. Then after the fact, I added a compressor just to level it out. So now I don't need to ride it so much. All right, that's the hat. Tain't no big thing. What the hell, let's do the racks. Again, tom, floor. So the two toms are comped together into a stereo track, and then is it a stereo track? No, they're just comped together. Because there's not a whole lot of difference between the two. So we've got one, let me find a place. That's a good place to loop. It helps if you turn the cycle on. And it helps if you unmute it. Okay, so the racks sound pretty good just the way they are. They don't need a whole lot, but what they do need is gating. And the gate on the floor tom is there, and the gate on the rack is here. So the thresholds are pretty high. The threshold for the racks is just -7, and I'm bringing it down by -30. So that's quite a lot. On the floor was much more isolated. So the threshold here is minus 21, and I'm only bringing it down by 19, which isn't, well, it's, okay, 19's a lot, but it doesn't need a whole lot. Then EQ-wise, I'm trying to, now what, if you think about what's the point of the close miking of the toms, most of the tom information is going to be in the overheads, again, as far as spatial information. And the decay is going to be in the room. So once again, those gates are never going to be heard if you do it right. But what the close miking does is it gives you the notes back. Do, 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 do. And that's really what we're looking for. So EQ-wise, you want to, let me turn that on. So if we take a look at the rack EQ, I'm bringing the note up in the 2K region, and I'm carving 116 because it's, you want to get rid of that, but you don't want to lose the bottom, so I'm carving it. I'm bringing up the bottom and then notching out at 116. With the floor, is something similar. This one I'm carving out at 100, and then adding some presence at the top, right? So that's everything on there. So let's put this into perspective here. Okay, that'll make more sense once we get the room and the overheads in. Speaking of overheads, let's cut all this gubbins and go straight to the overheads. Now, as I said, it's not a stereo track. There are two of them, and you're panning them a little bit, but it's more like one of these kind of things. And then the hat is more over here. So that covers the whole spectrum. Those are going out of the RME, through the bay, into two prisms, the dynamic section. I'm linking them together, even though they're not a stereo track. And it kind of works. Because he does a lot of which kind of works. From there, I'm coming into the first two prism EQs. And I'm not doing a whole lot there, but we'll get there in a minute. So let's go over to here. So the first thing that I'm doing to these is compressing them. And again, they're linked. But I'm not hitting it all that hard. It's bringing it down by, again, 3-4 dB at most. And it's the return, it's a fast attack, but it's an auto return. So it's like 800 milliseconds, something like that. And then out of there, I'm going into the EQs, which is just adding a little 17 for air. And then I'm adding, where is it? Some 1.5, 1.6, something like that, just for the presence. I'm not doing anything with the low end. I'm not doing anything with the low mids. I'm leaving it just as it is. Now, if we take a look at the return here, these overheads are going into the room reverb. So it's the snare in the room reverb and the overheads in the room reverb. And that's it, I believe. Did I do? No, the room is in there too. But we'll get to that in a minute. All right, so what do we got with kick, snare, hat? And the racks. Let me go back. All right, so that sounds not bad. But here is the thing that's going to tie the whole thing together. And that is, cut, 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 cut. That is the room. And we're going to take a look at what I'm doing here in 1 second. Let me just turn everything off. That's on. Okay. This is in bypass. Okay, so the room sounds like this. And it's pretty bombastic, as I said. So I brought it into the TLA. It's coming out of the RMA into the TLA and straight back in, and I'm going to EQ in the box. But this, as soon as I hit this, you're going to hear exactly why I did, why I put it through the TLA. So this is out, in, out, in. Right? It just tightens the whole thing up, and really it's going to make it so that it really works with not only the toms and the kick, but the snare as well. Okay, then from there, I'm using a 550B, the API EQ, and it's not a whole lot. I'm taking some 8K out of the top so that it's not shrill, and I'm adding some 20K just for air. Once again, I'm removing just 2 dB of 500 Hertz. I'm doing nothing with the bottom end. So let me throw that in there. All right, so that is all of it, and we are going to now listen to the whole thing. Excuse me. We're going to listen to the whole thing with everything on. All right, now to me that sounds pretty good. Let's go to the refrain where you actually hear the ride. All right, well, I'm pretty pleased with that. I am not at all upset. Now, I've got 2 virtual tracks. I've got the straight up tracks, and then I've got 2 more virtual tracks coming back. These are just listening to the input. All of these, none of these are going to the stereo bus. They're all going to a drum bus. And across the drum bus, I've got a Fairchild. I'm not hitting, am I hitting it all that hard? No, not really. But it's, you know, let me take it out. Right, so it's doing its 2-mix compressor thing. And then the only other thing, and I put this in and then I take it out, and I put it in and I take it out, and I can't decide. I've got this Pultec here. And see what you think of it. So this is out. And this is in. Out. And in. And all it's doing is boosting it. It's boosting at 3. in a very broad, so it's not, it's just kind of boosting the middle. So you're not getting that high and low, what do they call that? Midnight EQ kind of curve. Anyway, so those are the drums. I am pretty happy with what I'm hearing. Now, I tried going into the 542s, the Ruben Neve Designs tape saturators, and as the drum bus, and it was good, but it was too soft. I tried the red silk was a little brittle on top, and again, it softened it more than I wanted it to. And the blue was a little dull, and I thought, well, I could just EQ that out. But then, I don't know, I wasn't getting what I wanted out of it. And I felt like, well, am I adding this just so that I could say, oh, I used the tape saturator? Possibly. So I took them out, and I went with this. Now, is this album ready? No, it needs to be tweaked, and obviously the other instruments come in and changes are made according to that. But from a good, I spent 45 minutes on this. I'm pretty pleased with what I'm hearing. Now, the thing that I need to do is I need to check and see, what does this sound like when I take it outside of this room, and make sure that it's actually translating. Because again, these Questeds are fantastic. But they can handle more than other speaker systems can. So you got to be a little careful with that, and you got to get to know them. But these are replacements, because the originals got completely demolished. Those were, I bought those in 2004, back in the old studio in Brooklyn. So these are replacements. They're slightly updated, but they're the same speaker, and I can tell they're the same speaker, definitely. So I'm very familiar with these. But I'm going to take a bounce of this and play it upstairs, and then I'm going to take a bounce of it and I'm going to play it in the car, and we'll see what those sound like. But either way, I'm pretty happy for a first run. The patching was great. The wiring was perfect first time out. No changes there at all. There's a little issue with, I think, the card edge connector in the Prism. Sometimes that needs a whack. And there are a couple of pots here and there that need cleaning out. But other than that, I'm pretty pleased. And I hope that this was interesting. I know it gets a little boring, but I'm going to cut this together so maybe it won't be so boring and it won't be so long. But yeah, so that's that. Next video I'm making is, man, there's a lot to talk about with the studio and the damage that got done. Had a water leak in the house, and it's not something you want to deal with, especially when you've got vintage gear. But I'll get into all that and dealing with the insurance companies and or company. If you think you're insured, you're wrong. So there's stuff to learn. It's going to be some important videos, things that you can do to protect yourself, not to protect yourself against the insurance companies, because there's nothing you can do, but to make sure that you understand what you've got and what you can do prior to there being any problem, because everyone's got an opinion. And it's like saying, well, I'll go into this later, but if you've got a Willie Mays card, baseball card, and you expect to get paid out because that Willie Mays baseball card was demolished, good luck with the insurance company. That's what I'll say about that. Anyway, have a good day, and I will see you in the next video.